Hello and welcome to the sine, cosine, and tangent video tutorial. Here we have three triangles with missing sides and angles, and we're going to use sine, cosine, and tangent to solve for them. So in our first triangle, we're missing the bottom side, which is the horizontal or the x, and the hypotenuse or r. In physics, it is common to call the horizontal side x, the vertical side y, and the hypotenuse r. So we'll start by solving for x. So to solve for x, we have the angle here, we have the opposite side, and we're looking for the adjacent side. So opposite and adjacent is tangent. So the tangent of 55 is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. So the tangent of 55, we're going to get that on a calculator. So I'm just going to hit 55 in the tan button, and 1.428. And that's equal to 8 over x. And I'm going to multiply both sides by x, so 1.428x is equal to 8. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 1.428. So x is equal to 8 divided by 1.428, 5.602. Okay, just check our answer to make sure it makes sense. Since this is the larger angle, we would expect this to be the larger side. This angle is 35 over here, so we'd expect this to be the shorter side, and this number is shorter than this number. Now to solve for the r, we have the opposite, and we're looking for the hypotenuse, so that's sine. The sine of the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So hit 55 and sine on the calculator, I get 0.819 is equal to 8 over r. And I'm just going to follow the same procedure I followed up here. So it's going to end up being 8 divided by this number. So I get r is equal to 9.766. By the way, these are in meters because this value here is meters. That tells you the values of everything else. So this number, check our answer to make sure it makes sense, should be the longest number of the three sides, because the hypotenuse is always the longest side. It's longer than this side, and it's longer than this side. So makes sense. Alright, in our next triangle, why don't we start by solving for y right here. So this is the angle up here. This is the adjacent side, because this side is touching the angle. And this is our hypotenuse, so that is cosine. So the cosine of the angle, cosine is always equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine of 20, just do that on the calculator. I get 0.94 is equal to y over 24. And I'm going to multiply both sides by the 24. And I'm going to get y is equal to 22.553. And this side here should be smaller than this side. That's how you check your answers. And it is 22 versus 24. That's newtons, because this is newtons over here. Newtons is probably the most common use for sine, cosine physics, by the way. Force triangles are very common. Alright, now to solve for this side over here, this side is opposite of our angle, and so we have the hypotenuse and opposite, that's sine. Sine of 20 equals the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So the sine of 20, just do that on the calculator. Sine of 20 is 0.342, and that's going to be x over 24. Multiply both sides by 24, and you get x equals 8.208 newtons. Check our answer to see if that makes sense. This should be the smallest side because here's a really small angle here. And 8.2 is much smaller than 24, and it's smaller than 22. The answers make sense. For our last problem, we're going to solve for the missing angle and the missing side. Let's start with the angle. Here is our angle. We have the opposite and the adjacent side. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. So tangent of our angle is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side. What we're going to do is we're going to take the inverse tangent of both sides. So the inverse tangent of the left will equal the inverse tangent of the right. Okay. When you take the inverse tangent of a tangent, you just get the angle back, which is the whole reason why we're doing this. We're trying to figure out what the angle is. So that's the reason why we're doing this procedure. Now we have to find the inverse tangent of this value here. So I'm going to put 15 divided by 18 into a calculator, and I get 0.83 repeating. And then what I'm going to do is hit the inverse tangent button. It's above the tangent button. So second tan, and I get 39.8 degrees. If you're not getting this number, check to make sure that your calculator is set to degrees and not radians. That's the most common error. Same if you're not getting any of the above answers either. Alright, next we have to figure out this side here. So that's our hypotenuse. We can use cosine and use this side, or we can use sine and use this side. It really doesn't matter. I'll just use cosine. So the cosine of 39.8 is equal to the adjacent side, 18, divided by r. So the cosine of 39.8 is 0.768, just did that on a calculator. It's equal to 18 over r. Multiply both sides by r, 0.768 r is equal to 18. And so 18 divided by this number will give us our answer. 18 divided by 0.0768. Whoops. 18 divided by 0.768, not 0.0. So R is equal to 23.438 and newtons. Check to make sure it makes sense. This side should be our longest side, and it is longer than both 15 and 18 newtons. Thank you for watching the sine, cosine, and tangent video tutorial.